This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 306 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today we are talking all about eco-accommodation or sustainably, environmentally friendly places to stay. I would like to first pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I am recording this podcast today in a beautiful sunshine. It is definitely summer on the way here in Perth. So when it comes to eco-accommodation, I had to think about this and I realised that I definitely don't intentionally seek out sustainable, environmentally friendly accommodation as much as I should. So I hope this episode is definitely inspiring me to think about this more when I'm picking accommodation. And I hope it also gives you some ideas as well. I'm definitely grateful and very appreciative when I stay somewhere that has better eco credentials, or has lots of good programs there. That are making it more environmentally friendly place to stay, but I am not intentionally doing this, and I think I want to change that. I was thinking about this, for example, now if I need to take an Uber, I always pick Uber Green. I don't know if this is the same terminology in other countries, but relatively recently in Australia, you can choose Uber Green, which will be a hybrid vehicle or an electric vehicle. And usually it costs the same, but might take a few extra minutes to arrive because there's fewer of them. So I was like, okay, that's something I'm doing. Why can't I do this with my accommodation? So I will. Today, I fortunately have 3 guests who do this. And so I will share some ideas and some fun stories. My first guest is Dara Brewton, and I asked Dara if she had ever stayed in any eco-friendly accommodation, and she had a really fun story to tell.
So actually I stayed in one in Chiang Mai when I was there last year. So basically how I ended up in Thailand was I wanted to go somewhere for the month of July. I have a child that's in high school, so the summer was the only time we could really go on an extended trip. So I went on Airbnb and I just put in $500 for the month and I clicked anywhere. And
that's so cool. I want to do that now.
It was really fun. I expected it to be Mexico for some reason, but Thailand popped up first and I was like, And so when I was looking through the first couple, there was a place called Leafy Greens. It's kind of like a grounds. They have multiple places that you can stay on there, but they're shaped like mushrooms. So they have little mushroom tops and they're made out of clay. They're little tiny homes. And they're made out of really thick clay, I guess, because it keeps the coolness in. So you don't have to run the AC very much. Right. Which we didn't. I mean, we could turn it off for parts of the day and just in the really hot part of the day, you have to turn it on. But the walls would absorb the cold or something. And then it would just keep radiating back out. So wow. It was very energy efficient. And they had solar panels, to help with the electricity. And they had an outdoor kitchen that you could use. And then they had a nice water filtration system. So you didn't have to keep buying bottled waters, which, you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know what their recycling is like. Well, although they had recycling at the place, but, just the infrastructure of the country, I don't want to add more mess, And then they also had this really big organic garden. And so anything that was in season, they would put baskets out, please take one. And so we had lychee and stuff like that just came fresh out of the garden, which was amazing.
I love lychee.
Oh, it was so good too. It was fresh, they picked it and was here. Oh. So it was they had multiple little mushrooms that you could stay in. And then they had a bigger house that I think 10 people could stay in it, but it looked like a snail shell. And then they had just a room, a regular bedroom attached to the big house where I think they lived or the caretaker lived. Right. But it was just an awesome property. It was gated. And when you walked in, it was just you were in this beautiful, it felt like you were going into another world. Here you are going into Wonderland or something. And it was just the most peaceful. There's a little river on the backside of it with a dock you could sit on. It was so peaceful and just, I like being able to stay in local places because I feel like if you're going to travel, like, you want to help the local economy, not just Hilton.
I agree.
Also, like, if I'm going all the way to Thailand, I don't want to just stay in an American place. Like, I'll just stay here. I won't pay for that plane
exactly.
ticket.
It's going to look the same inside, isn't it?
It'll be the same. But then also getting, like, an eco-friendly place, too, so that you don't, like, drain their resources. Because traveling it can be draining on a country's resources. Like, I don't want to just use places up,
Absolutely. This place sounds adorable. I've got to go and look it up.
I would 100% recommend. It was gorgeous. The people were so sweet, and it was such a nice stay. Like, we stayed a whole month, so it was lovely.
Wow, amazing. So you stayed in one of the mushroom ones, then, just the tiny house mushroom, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was just me and my teenager. And so, like, they had like they're round because they're mushrooms. So when you walk in, there was like kind of like a little kitchenette. It had like a tea kettle and a microwave and a refrigerator. And then there was a bathroom. And then there's like a downstairs bedroom. And then there was a very, I don't want to say sketchy staircase, but like, you need to be good on your feet.
You need to be a bit agile.
Yeah, like, don't be clumsy, because it was kind of just like open, but it like spiraled around the mushroom, and then there was like a loft bedroom up there, which was where my teenager claimed immediately upon going in there, was like, this is mine. This loft is mine. But there was a air conditioner up there and an air conditioner downstairs, so like, because the loft did get a little hotter.
Right.
Than the downstairs.
Fair enough.
But still, the stone walls, like, you could feel how cool it was just by touching the walls. So we were both pretty comfortable.
So obviously these places sound totally adorable. If you Google leafy greens and see the mushroom shape, you will probably, like me, be absolutely putting them on your list of places you must stay. And I have not yet been to Chiang Mai in Thailand. Been many parts of it, but not that yet. So I guess a mushroom stay is on the cards for me sometime soon. Now, my next guests are Andrew and Fran Robinson, who are local Western Australians. They run the Tree Chalets accommodation a little bit south of me, a few hours south near Busselton in the southwest of Western Australia. Now, their eco-adventure started about 15 years ago. They had a block of land, part of Fran's family land, and they decided to plant 6,000 trees on it. And they did describe to me what a lot of work it was. They were hand planting with their family and friends, pruning them regularly over the weekends, over the many, many years. But the result is an absolutely stunning forest, in a sense, of these trees. And these trees gradually grew and grew, became a pretty good-looking place. And, well, this is what happened next.
And then one day when we were having a walk around our trees, we normally in the evening we'd come down, Andrew would grab a beer, I'd have my wine, and we'd walk around the trees and just relax and that. We sat down on this tree stump and we're looking at the beautiful vista, and we think we've got to put some accommodation here.
Well, actually it was more like one of us said, people would pay to stay here. If we were looking for somewhere to go, that view would just be, this is what we want. And that's where the seed was planted, and then we started a long, 2-year process?
Yeah.
To build an application, just building up, which is fine, it's a process. And then the build, and then away we went. It's been a lot of work.
And I guess from the eco perspective, we've always been that way inclined. Even up in Perth, we were one of the first people to get solar cells on our house. We were, one of the first people to get a green loan. So we've always been that way inclined, and I think it just naturally sort of came into when we built the chalets. We started from being off-grid from the get-go. We didn't have to retrofit anything, so we started with car chargers on the chalets.
It was a conscious decision.
Yeah.
We're tree huggers, but we're not fair. Yeah. So we value the tree change lifestyle and being environmentally friendly, but we have clean clothes.
It's a good combo. Yeah. It's the perfect combo. Yes. Yeah. But that's great to have started with being off grid, rather than trying to change things over later. Then, you can. Was it difficult? Like, was it hard to bring that the off-gridness and, like a really lovely place to stay? Were there any things that were complex about it?
I think you have to sort of stick to your guns when you know what you want, design-wise, build-wise, product-wise, and you just have to keep on looking for solutions. It's actually quite difficult and quite a long process. Whatever it is, whether you're looking for appliances, whether you're looking for, like a simple example is our grazing boards we have in the chalets. That was a 9-month process to get plastic-free. It's just crazy. It shouldn't be that hard.
Wow,
I think
really?
it is getting easier.
It shouldn't be that hard, should it? And yet it is.
People doing it. Our solar farm on the roof and our batteries and that. At the same time, we were thinking of this with another local businessman starting up doing that. So therefore, we were sort of like, he'd been doing it for a bit, but then we came along and that's what we wanted to do. And so
right.
Technology is arriving, and we were sort of at the front of not front of the envelope, but we were sort of going, well, can we do this? And he went away, came back and said, yes, you can do this and this. But you won't be able to have these sort of products because of your power transfer from here to the chalets. But that was flown with low power usage equipment.
Yeah.
For example, your washing machines. Technology is getting there and it's getting easier, but it is still a journey. Everything we can do. For example, the toiletries we use. It's a leaf product.
Yeah.
And there's a certification we've accepted we will maintain for all our products. We're trying to get enough of them and the right type to maintain your eco standards. You can go cheap and cheerful, but they're not credited, and then you're not playing the game. And we're more than happy to be compliant.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Even though it's difficult sometimes to source everything, but I think it's also such a just a good example for others, and people who come and stay and see all of the things that you use. It just sort of spreads the word, spreads the demand, and then it makes it easier, down the track
for the second, third, fourth, fifth bit. Yeah, and we get a lot of the guests asking, "Why have you got them raised?" I could say we did it for the view and make it beautiful. We raised it to get cross ventilation underneath it. So in summer we get a nice strong southerly here. So we raised them 800. Air flows underneath, flows over and flows through. They're naturally cool. You don't need the air conditioning. Bonus side of that is when you're standing on the deck, it feels like you are standing in the trees because you're not on the ground. You're raised 800. So it was an accident, but we'll take it. We planned it, and everything was just thought through. But that worked beautifully for us, hasn't it, Fran?
Yeah. It is. We're always looking for ways to be more eco-friendly. We're always looking for ways to include the guest experience in that. And part of that is sort of mildly educating guests about what it's like to stay somewhere off-grid.
Mm-hmm.
Because whilst we want our guests to have an absolutely luxurious experience, there's also little things that they can do to help, like the time they turn the dishwasher on is don't turn it on at midnight because we're on batteries, that type of thing. So it's just a slight learning curve to sort of, people will sort of become more aware of what they're actually doing and when they're doing it.
And also you get a lot of youngish couples starting out building houses and they go, well, why have you done that? And you go, well, it's north-south orientated to get the breeze. The roof's this way for that. And they go, I hadn't thought of that. And you go, well, if you're building, tell your builder you want your roof a certain way, you get more cells on your roof. All of a sudden, your power, there is a startup cost with all of this. But if your roof's got more roof space to put more cells on, you then can store more. You might be able to go to Western Power. We don't need your battery. We're just going to go batteries.
Yes, I love that. And like you say, the mild educational approach. But I think we're, the kind of people who would choose to stay at your chalets are the kind of people who are open to that anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, all of those little things, I think a lot of people come home from trips with ideas that they can carry into their everyday life. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've stayed at accommodation and taken photos like, oh, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. And I think a lot of people do that, it's a really interesting thought, to think you can influence people like that. But one thing we found with the now we've got eco certification is our carbon footprint. And the trees, because they're now quite mature at 15 years of age, they are consuming a lot of CO2. So now we're carbon zero. We're actually, our accommodation produces about 10 tonne CO2 a year, but our trees consume 26 tonne.
Wow.
And to sort of have that self-contained, like normally businesses, they would buy offsets.
So we're not the first carbon zero accommodation, because there's other companies that have got the ticks and done the process for. But we think we're the first self-sustaining because we haven't had to purchase trees somewhere else.
You've done your own carbon offsetting. Yeah,
we've done all the work.
Yeah,
that is pretty special. Again, you need to see pictures of this place to believe how beautiful it is, so I'll have links in the show notes, of course. But I extra love that Andrew and Fran have this hope that people will also learn something more or get some tips or ideas about sustainability and environmentally friendly living, even though they're on a luxury stay. But the whole off-gridness of it, I don't know if off-gridness is a word, but it is now, is this mild education idea as well. Love it. All right, my final guest today is Nina Karnikowski, travel writer and author who has had the privilege of being in many, many cool kinds of accommodation over the years. And she has two really interesting examples of accommodation that fits this kind of topic.
There's so many ways to, I think, look at eco-accommodation. There's the kind of off-grid experience, and then there's the whole idea of giving back. And then there's things like farm stays. There's all sorts of ways that you can look at it. But I have been thinking increasingly about the give back element. And last year I stayed at a really, really beautiful little house in the Nepalese Himalayas called the Happy House. And it is a stacked stone Sherpa house that was built a very long time ago, and the Sherpa's great, I believe, grandson is now running it. And his name is Ang Shering, and he has basically made sure that it's all been renovated. So you walk in along this cobblestone path and there's all Nepalese prayer flags floating in the trees in this very remote little village. And then you arrive at the stacked stone house and you walk in at the bottom of this house and it is just filled with Buddhist tanka paintings, which are those colourful Buddhist paintings that are inside of monasteries, but it's all over the inside of the house. So all over the walls, all over the ceiling. It feels like you've entered a monastery, and it is just filled with such a beautiful energy. And these paintings are really old now, but they have made sure that they have maintained them. And so it's this guest house. I think it fits about 20 all up. And you can book a single room or you can book out the whole house. But the beautiful thing is that it is obviously locally owned, and it is also fully staffed by Sherpas, and they have all these beautiful programs where they donate part of your guest stay to the local hospital, and also to little programs for local kids, like making sure that the kids have mountain bikes, and they get the mountain bike if they stay in school. So they have all these really beautiful give back programs, and also another element of that is really getting the guests out into the local community, which is, I think, so important as well. There's nothing worse than staying in a place where it's so lovely that you actually don't go out and meet anybody or do anything. And so they get you out for these like full day treks where you trek up into the mountains and then you spend a night in a local monastery, or you trek up onto another ridge and they have these Mongolian gur tents up on the ridge, and we had an overnight camping experience there, which was just so special because, you know, it was all shrouded in, we went through this big cloud forest that was like filled with mushrooms and beautiful mosses and things, and then you come up on the ridge and it was all shrouded in cloud. But then first thing in the morning, when you came out of the tent, the clouds parted. And there were the beautiful Himalayan peaks. It was just absolutely magical. So that place to me is almost like the pinnacle of the way that things are done. And, you know, a lot of it was off grid and that sort of thing. But I think more importantly was that connection to the local community and that ability to give back to the local community, quite aside from the incredible history of this place. So the first Italian ever to summit Everest, his name was Count Monzino, and he did so with something like 2,000 Sherpa with him, carrying everything from Edwardian gambling tables to like four-poster beds and things. And he was involved in the creation of that house because he stayed there on his way up and was like, this house is just incredible. How about I help you renovate it in exchange for me coming and staying occasionally? So this Count Monzino had a hand in this house. And so now when you stay in there is his Edwardian gambling table in there and all these sorts of things. It's just like it tells such a rich story. It was where Sir Edmund Hillary used to stay a lot on his Everest expeditions. So hits all the right points.
It sounds fabulous. And it has a lovely name. Happy House just sounds very happy.
It's very happy, and apparently that is because of Sir Edmund Hillary, because he said that it was the house that made him very happy, and then it got that name when they opened it as accommodation, which actually wasn't that long ago.
Interesting. Wow. Oh, that sounds adorable. I like that take on eco-accommodation too. I think that's a nice way to think about it. Can you give us a flavour of some of the other kinds of eco-accommodation you've enjoyed around the world?
Yes. An example of the sort of off-grid thing that I'm talking about. Last year I stayed on a renovated houseboat. The name of the houseboat was Oh Boy, and it was in, you get it? Mm-hmm. And it was in Barara waters, so that is outside of Sydney. And you meet the owner on a wharf and they pick you up on a little runabout, gorgeous little yellow runabout, and take you over to the boat and show you around. And then we just spent 3 full days on there. And it's completely run on solar and rainwater and all those things, because of course when you're on a boat you kind of have to be eco in a way, because it's very difficult to run it otherwise. And the owners were really quirky, and they had filled the boat with vintage everything. So every piece of furniture was either collected from the side of the road or from a secondhand store, including, the stove and everything in there. And it had so much soul and life in it because of that. Everything had a story to tell. And then also, because when you're on something like a boat, you become so conscious of the resources that you're using, because you don't want to use anything up. You don't want it to run out of electricity. You don't want to run out of water. So I think that's another element of the eco-accommodation thing, is that it gives you a new way of looking at your own life back home. So you go home and you kind of think about your resource use a little bit more, and you think about, perhaps we could take things off grid a little bit, or maybe we could be using less water or taking much shorter showers, because instead of having 2 longer showers a day there, we were having, 1 shorter one in order to make sure we didn't use up the water. And so it was delightful in all those sorts of ways. But also, again, you're kind of thrown into the lap of nature, which is so important, because we protect what we love. And if you're staying somewhere that really puts you in the center of the natural world like that, here we were on this river surrounded by bushland. You could hop off, you could kayak around to a little cove and then go for a bushwalk. It's that really immersive nature experience. We were just watching the kind of patterns of the light being thrown off the water for an entire morning. You just, as I say, you protect what you love. And so having those immersive nature experiences are so important.
Some really intriguing examples there, and I do love that Nina's example on the boat and talking about how we might go home and think more about our own choices harks back to what Fran and Andrew were saying. It's a good bonus of these kinds of trips and stays and eco-accommodation in general. So, thank you so much for listening to episode 306 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Some links and info for you. I first chatted with Dara Brewton. She writes for travelness.com, and she mentioned leafy greens. The best way to look into leafy greens is to go to their Facebook page, facebook.com/leafygreenscm, CM for Chiang Mai. Then I chatted with Fran and Andrew Robinson from Tree Chalets down here near Busselton, and their website is treechalets.com.au. Worth a look just to see their beautiful trees. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Nina Karnikowski. You can find out more about Nina's writing and work at ninakarnikowski.com. She has a new book out called The Mindful Traveller, which is sitting right next to me on my to-be-read pile. So you'll probably be hearing more about that soon. Not probably, I'm sure I will be sharing more. And also I have linked to the Happy House Nepal in the show notes as well, which she mentioned because it's pretty cool, happyhousenepal.com. Don't forget to come and chat with us in the Facebook group or LinkedIn group. Come and tell us your tips for good eco-accommodation. The link's in the show notes, or just search for Thoughtful Travellers in either Facebook or LinkedIn. And if you need any of these links again, you can find them all in the show notes. For this episode, they will be at notaballerina.com/306. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.